Hey there, in the bathroom, just finishing up creating an important prop with this water balloon, where we are going to talk about how stripping membranes is done, pros and cons. Let's dive into all the details of this procedure. Let's do it. So together in this video, we're going to dive into this topic. We're going to cover everything from how stripping the membranes is done, and we're going to compare it to other methods of inductions. And of course, we're going to look at the pros and cons. Now, stripping membranes, it's also called sweeping membranes, and you might even hear it called a stretch and sweep. So all of these refer to the same procedure. Sometimes some doctors use one word over another, but this procedure is done in your doctor or midwife's office during a prenatal appointment, usually somewhere between 38 weeks and 40 weeks. So this procedure can also be done when you are in the hospital during an induction, but it's usually done in the prenatal appointment. But you cannot strip the membranes yourself. So the reason that we would strip membranes at all is to encourage your body to go into labor. It's almost like a bit of a jump start into labor. A couple things I really want you to know before we go any further is that this procedure is optional. So it's something that should be your choice, a decision you make with your provider. It still makes me crazy to know that there are doctors that will do a membrane sweep without any kind of consent. I can't believe I've been hearing about this for the last 17 years that I have been a doula. I'm not sure why it hasn't stopped yet, but what happens sometimes is a provider will do a cervical check and then say, I did a sweep while I was checking your cervix. It shouldn't go like that. Anytime that you're going to have a cervical check, it's a great time to have the conversation with your provider about, well, first of all, your preferences on the cervical check, but then your preferences and your decision on whether to do a sweep of your membranes at the same time. So it's an optional procedure. It doesn't have to be done, and it should be your choice. The next thing is that membrane sweeps can't happen unless your cervix is open enough, dilated enough for a fingertip to fit through it. So if your cervix is closed, it just can't happen. So it might not be an option for you depending upon what's going on with your cervix. And if you're wondering what it feels like, if it's painful, we are going to cover that in this video, so stay tuned. So let's grab our prop and talk about why this action might send your body into labor. In this example, the water balloon represents the amniotic sac filled with amniotic fluid and the baby. The glass jar represents the uterus. Now, during the procedure, your doctor or midwife will insert a gloved finger into your vagina, and that finger will go through the opening in your cervix. They'll then sweep away the membranes, so that's the tissue in this example, that are found between the amniotic sac, the balloon, and the top of the cervix. So this act of disrupting the membranes, the tissue in this example, when you disrupt the membranes, it can release a hormone called prostaglandin. Prostaglandin is what can cause your body to start contracting, and that could start labor. Now, if labor starts after this procedure, then that is considered by most people to be the number one pro. That starting labor with something as relatively easy as stripping the membranes is really an ideal outcome of this procedure. So another pro is that it can be done during a prenatal visit. So you don't have to be hospitalized. You don't have to go through all of the actions that go with being admitted to a hospital. If it starts labor, you can go home. You can do your resting and early labor at home, and you can go about your plan for early labor as if your body started labor on its own. So it's different than other induction methods like Pitocin, the Foley bulb, and having your water broken. A third pro is that, unlike those other methods that I just mentioned, you don't have to be monitored. It's relatively low risk, so your baby does not have to be monitored during this form of induction. Now, I think the number one con for most people is that it can be quite uncomfortable or possibly even painful. Before labor begins, the cervix is pointed backwards toward your back. It's posterior, which can make it during a vaginal exam hard to reach, and that can increase pain. Now, I did a quick search in the Reddit bumper groups on experiences that people had when they had their membranes swept or stripped, and the descriptions of what they felt was quite a huge range. So people described this experience everywhere from the pain, hurt like a mofo, more uncomfortable than a pap smear, not that bad, quite painful, and didn't hurt at all. Now, a second con is that it does have the risk of breaking your water, which would begin a medical induction of labor. So there's like no turning back once your water is broken. So the other thing is anytime your cervix is checked, there's risk of introducing bacteria, which would increase your risk of an infection. Definitely a con. Now, the third con is that it can cause a crampiness, a discomfort that doesn't end up leading to labor. Now, I've had many doula clients experience this outcome where they go into their 39-week appointment, they get their membranes stripped, and then they start feeling crampiness, like period cramps, but more uncomfortable. And then they end up having a sleepless night of cramping that doesn't turn into labor. Now, I've also worked with clients who have had this sleepless night of cramping that does eventually turn into labor the next day, but they're starting out labor kind of exhausted, and because they were dealing with the cramps that were started by the stripping of the membranes. So if you're wondering if it's worth it, whether you should get your membranes swept, then it's good to know the pros and cons, and then also consider your other options. So you might have the option of just waiting to go into labor for another week. You might be offered the sweep a day before an induction. And those two scenarios are very different and might lead you to make different choices on whether or not you want it done. Now, if you get your membranes stripped and it doesn't work, depending upon what's going on with your pregnancy and the options that your provider might give you, they might allow you or ask you if you want to have another strip done at your next prenatal appointment. So it's not uncommon for people to have this done a couple of times leading up to labor. Now, since we're talking about induction, probably the next video you might want to check out is all about Pitocin. Pitocin is kind of mysterious and there's so many stories about it. I put together a video on Pitocin that I think you'll find really helpful, and I'm going to link that next. If you found this video helpful, I would love it if you liked the video. If you subscribe to the channel, I've got lots of videos that I know that you would love, and I will make it worth your while. Talk to you next time. Bye, guys.